Biogeochemical cycles. We have seen that our environment consists of biotic, which are living organisms, and abiotic, non-living component. Living are like plants, we have animals, microorganisms, and abiotic is like soil, water, and this biotic and abiotic components are always interacting with each other, and as they interact with each other there is a transfer of energy and matter. Like here in this picture you can see carbon. The carbon moves between the biotic and abiotic components of the air, of the atmosphere or of the environment. Here nitrogen too. The nitrogen moves within the biotic and the abiotic components of the ecosystem. These cycles are called biogeochemical cycles. So if we were to define biogeochemical cycle, there's a constant interaction between biotic and abiotic components of the biosphere, makes it dynamic but a stable system. These interactions consist of transfer of matter and energy between the different components of the biosphere. These cycles are called the biochemical cycles. So in this slide we will learn the first biochemical cycle, which is that of water. We will see how water moves between the biotic and the abiotic components of the biosphere. We'll now learn about the water cycle. We'll first start at the water bodies, like in the seas. We see the water first evaporates, the first step, and when it reaches up here it condenses and forms the clouds. The clouds then would move towards the land, and at the land it would fall down as rain. Now water also enters the atmosphere by a process called transpiration, or also by the process of respiration. When we respire we give out water vapor. So all this water enters the atmosphere. So we just draw this again. The water will enter the atmosphere by various processes. One is by evaporation from the water bodies, by transpiration from plants, and also during respiration. This is how it enters into the atmosphere from the ground. Now then it returns back to the ground in the form of rain or snow. It returns back to the surface of the earth. Then from here it would then penetrate into the underground, into the soil to form groundwater, or some of them would flow back into the sea. So here you can see the water here will fall down as rain. It will then fall into and get into the ground. Some of this will flow back into the sea, and the whole process then continues again. Let's go over it again. So from the water bodies, the water enters into the atmosphere by the process of evaporation. It also enters into the atmosphere by other methods like transpiration and respiration. Transpiration is by plants, and by respiration. So this is how water would enter into the atmosphere. Now from the atmosphere the water now falls back to the ground in the form of rain or snow or sleet, hail. These are different ways by which water will now fall back into the ground. Now some of this water will percolate into the ground to form the groundwater. And some of it would flow back into the sea. Some of it, of course, will be taken up by living organisms here and then thrown out by respiration. Some will be taken by plants and also will be then thrown out by transpiration. So here's the water cycle. Let's read about it. You have seen how water evaporates from the water bodies and subsequent condensation of the water vapor leads to rain. But we don't see the seas and oceans drying up. So how is the water returning to these water bodies? The whole process in which water evaporates and falls on the land as rain and later flows back into the sea via the rivers is known as a water cycle. The cycle is not as straightforward and simple as this statement seems to imply. All of the water that falls on the land does not immediately flow back to the sea. Some of it seeps into the soil and becomes a part of the underground reservoir of fresh water. Some of it underground water finds its way to the surface through springs, or we bring it to the surface for our use through wells or tube wells. Water is also used by terrestrial animals and plants for various life processes. Let us look at another aspect of what happens to water during a water cycle. As you know, water is capable of dissolving a large number of substances. As water flows through over rocks containing soluble minerals, some of them get dissolved in the water. Thus, rivers carry many nutrients from the land to the sea, and these are used by marine organisms. So what is this is as water falls down on the land and it begins to flow. Here it begins to flow into the ocean. It carries along with it a lot of nutrients. These nutrients which are present in the soil get dissolved in the water and they are carried into the sea. And these nutrients are then used by the marine animals. What happens to water that falls on the surface? So one thing that would happen, it would penetrate or percolate into the ground. And as it goes into the ground, it forms the groundwater, which can be seen in our wells. Another one, it is taken up by plants and animals. Because it forms a very important part of their body. And a part of it could be flowing back into the sea. Or other water bodies. Next is, how do marine animals get the nutrients? So the rivers carry many nutrients from the land to the sea, and these are used by marine animals. You could also write this as water flows through or over rocks containing soluble minerals. Some of them get dissolved in the water. So this is the answer for this question, this answer. So here we have learned the water cycle.